This is part 3 of chapter 39, the third video segment for this chapter. First off, I need to say that men in general cannot multitask, and old men like myself really cannot multitask. I can talk, or I can do a PowerPoint. Very difficult for me to do both, I guess. So, where we left off with chapter 39, we initially talked about the nature and classifications of corporations, how they're a creature of statute, they're a person in the eyes of the law, talked about personnel and limited liability of shareholders, taxation, double taxation, the corporation and the shareholders. We moved on and talked about how the corporations can be liable because they're an artificial being. They can be liable for both criminal acts and civil acts. We talked about different types of classifications of corporations, domestic, foreign, and alien, public and private, nonprofit, and we talked about closed corporations. And then we left off with subchapter S corporations. Subchapter S corporations, where we pick up here today, have been around for a long time. At one time, they were very, very popular because they existed prior to LLCs. This will make sense in a moment. Subchapter S corporations were corporations that had the best of both worlds. The shareholders had limited liability, but the shareholders were taxed individually. There was no double taxation. The money passed through the corporation like a partnership, and the shareholders were taxed. So that was a very popular thing until LLCs came along. LLCs are a lot more much easier to manage. Subchapter S corporations, if you look at page 747, they have a lot of hoops for you to jump through in order to qualify for subchapter S status. And so a lot tougher to qualify to be a subchapter S corporation than it is to file the necessary paperwork and be an LLC. So you don't have as many subchapter S corporations nowadays as you used to have because people prefer to go with an LLC instead. And then lastly, you've got two other things. You've got a professional corporation. Professional corporations, like LLPs, limited liability partnerships, are formed by professional companies, law firms, CPAs, and so forth. And the same kind of rules apply. Personal liability does not exist. The individual shareholders of the law firm or the CPA firm are protected, except when that particular shareholder does the malpractice themselves. They may be at risk. Their personal assets may be at risk, but the personal assets of the other shareholders, the other attorneys, of the other CPAs, their personal liability is not at risk. So that's a professional corporation. Then lastly, we have benefit corporations. Those are a fairly recent creation as well, in that they are socially conscious type of corporations. A good example of that would be, say, Tom's Shoes, not my shoes, but Tom's Shoes, in which they, if I recall correctly, for every pair of shoes they sell, they donate another pair of shoes to a charitable organization to give to poor people, which is a very, very admirable. The benefit corporations are known for their purpose, which is partially to benefit society as well as make money. And they're also known for their accountability and their transparency. So a good summary of these various types of classifications of corporations that I covered at the beginning of this segment and the tail end of the last segment is summarized on page 749. Great study tool. You'll want to look at that chart so you get an understanding of the various types of classifications of corporations. So there you go. Let's move on now to corporate formation and powers. Corporate formation and powers. And Tom, let's go on to the next slide. How about that? How do we form a corporation? How does that happen? What do we do? Well, the first thing you do, let's go back to our example of the three people, men or women, who graduated from Point Loma that want to get together and form a business they decide to form a corporation. Well, the first thing they do is they engage in what are known as promotional activities. They sit down with the various companies they want to buy office furniture from, or they want to rent office space from. Companies they might start to buy parts for their inventory for whatever business it may be in. Things like that. They engage in promotional activities, and they sign the contracts with the understanding with those various companies, the landlord, the inventory company, the computer company, whoever, that when the corporation is formed, a novation will occur, and the corporation will take the place of the names of the promoters in these pre-corporate contracts as part of the promotional activities. So that's what you do as far as promotional activities. Then what do these three people do next? Well, they start to do incorporation procedures. First off, they figure out, well, what state do we want to incorporate in? Well, we're all living here in California. The business is going to be in California, so let's make it California. Fine, that's the state. Let's secure a corporate name. Well, I was thinking about using the term Microsoft as the name of our corporation. Well, here now, let's check with the state to see whether or not we can use that name to incorporate. And chances are, if you check with California, they'll probably say, yeah, that name's really not available. There's already a Microsoft that's out there, not necessarily in California. Well, how about Apple? No, that's taken too. Well, let's come up with a name that the state of California says that name is available. And then once we find out that name is available on their database, we pay a certain little amount of money and we secure that name. We have it saved for us so that we can make sure that name is going to be available when we form the corporation. Then you sit down with your attorney, and the attorney prepares for you and drafts what are known as articles of incorporation. And with that, you'll want to take a look at page 750 of the text, page 750 of the text, and there is a draft template that's used for the articles of incorporation. Good to know. And it lists the name of the corporation, the period it will be in business, the purpose of the corporation. Usually you put down to engage in any lawful activity, the number of shares. You can just go right down the list and see who's included in there. One of the big things that's included in the articles of incorporation is the name of the agent for service of process. That person is selected to be the person who is served with documents on behalf of the corporation. I have friends who lived outside of the state of California. They lived in Colorado, but they wanted to form a California corporation, and they asked me to serve as their agent for service of process, which I did, and they list my name and the address of my office, so that if they get sued, I can get served with the summons and complaint and all the legal documents for the purpose of the lawsuit, and then I would pass it on to them because they live in Colorado. So it's possible, of course, to have jurisdiction of the corporation because it's incorporated in California. Again, sufficient minimum contacts, remember that? So the agent for service of process is also listed on the articles of incorporation. So all that is put on there, and the articles of incorporation are then filed with the Secretary of State for the state of California. And once those articles are filed, drum roll please, you have an official corporation with the state of California that's incorporated in the state of California. How cool is that? Well, once you get that done and you have a corporation up and running, you have the first organizational meeting of your three people. Right? You're the incorporators. You make sure that the contracts, the novation takes place, so the contracts list the corporation instead of you guys who were the promoters of the corporation did the promotional activities. That's taken care of. And one of the other first things that you do is you adopt the bylaws. The bylaws of the corporation are the house rules, the roadmap of how the corporation is going to be run. And your attorney along with preparing the articles of incorporation, will also provide you with the bylaws of the corporation and how they are run. I see we've passed the 10-minute mark. So we have adopted the bylaws. We've assumed responsibility for the contracts. I think it's a good point to stop here, and we'll pick up with the chapter from that point forward. So see you in the next segment.